Good evening. He has never forgotten the events of D-Day ever since his role in helping Allied forces end the war in Europe 300 miles away on the shores of Normandy. But today may be the last time 99-year-old veteran Joe Mines from Hornchurch will attend commemorative events in person. His story captivated audiences from around the world as it was read out by actor Martin Freeman. It was so poignant, the crowds and the Queen were moved to tears. Back here in the capital, there were other emotional services too for the veterans who couldn't travel to France today. With all the day's events, here's our correspondent, Simon Harris.
From one D-Day veteran, the noisiest of salutes. When HMS Belfast fired her guns at lunchtime, the shells were blanks, but 80 years ago, they were for real. At home in Chiswick, 100-year-old Pat Outram has crystal clear memories of June the 6th, 1944.
One of my run colleagues at the station we were based at, rushing into our room saying, "It started." And she was really excited because her fiancé was a prisoner of war. She said, they're going to get him out, they're going to get him out.
Pat was a linguist, eavesdropping on German radio transmissions and passing on information to codebreakers at the top-secret Station X, Bletchley Park in Buckinghamshire.
I feel extremely privileged in a sort of way that I could contribute to D-Day, and I think I did, knowing German and being able to relay their messages.
A few weeks ago, Pat returned to Normandy to visit the new British memorial at Vers-sur-Mer. And it was there today the King led the 80th anniversary commemoration, recalling the words of his grandfather, George VI.
How fortunate we were, and the entire free world, that a generation of men and women in the United Kingdom and other allied nations did not flinch when the moment came to face that test.
Among them, Joe Mines from Hornchurch in Essex, who landed on the beaches as a 19-year-old. His story was told by the actor Martin Freeman.
Back when I signed up, I met a fella on the train. I went to Normandy with him, but he got killed within about an hour of landing here. He was only young. I was 19 when I landed, but I was still a boy. I don't care what people say, I wasn't a man, I was a boy, and I didn't have any idea of war and killing. I was lucky. Yeah, I had lots and lots of luck. So why would I come back? Well, this is the last and only opportunity for me. The last there will ever be. And it's because of the lads. I want to pay my respects to those who didn't make it. May they rest in peace.
In London, hundreds of people lined the banks to hear the guns of HMS Belfast.
Its role was to neutralise the big guns which lay behind the beach so that they couldn't fire on the troops as they landed.
Pat Outram eventually wrote a book about her wartime activities with her sister Jean, also a linguist.
You know, I did help to win the war, so why not be pleased about it?
Today, Pat wears her medals with pride, including the Légion d'honneur, France's top military award. Simon Harris, ITV News, Chiswick.
Well, we're joined now by Dr. Harry Rafal, the head of collections and research at the RAF Museum in Hendon. Some extraordinary scenes there today, weren't there?
Yeah, fantastic to see people celebrating very much the last of a generation. And I think what makes it carry so much poignancy is that they're ordinary people. These aren't the absolutely extraordinary stories from D-Day. They're the stories which went through time and time again by different people, and yet they're still so powerful. And so it's fantastic to see these people being celebrated today.
And of course the RAF had a massive role to play in D-Day, didn't it?
Absolutely, it's integral to the success of D-Day. So 5,656 RAF aircraft are operating on D-Day, part of an Allied air fleet of over 11,000 aircraft. Over 14,000 sorties are flown during D-Day, and that includes everything from fighter escorts over the D-Day fleet through to air attacks on German positions, and the work of Coastal Command stopping German surface vessels and U-boats, submarines, getting to attack the vessels crossing the channel, which was an extraordinary effort in and of itself, covering some 20,000 square miles of the sea south of Ireland. So really extraordinary. But for the RAF, D-Day was 1 day in the campaign. They had been attacking German transport networks for some 3 months beforehand to make sure that when the landing did happen, the Germans couldn't rapidly reinforce the area, and those efforts continued well after D-Day as well.
And of course, for people living in London on that day, they'd been through so much already by that point in the war, but D-Day was going to make a massive difference to all the aerial bombardments, wasn't it?
Well, yes, one of the key drivers for the need to liberate Europe is the fact that we are aware that the Germans are developing their vengeance weapons. The V1 in particular is very close to being launched, and in fact a week after D-Day the first V1 is fired, and there is a need to capture those sites to stop them being able to continue firing on the south of England. And some, at the peak of it, there's some 100 V1s being fired per day, and it really is only when the Allied forces are able to clear France and capture that area that they stop being a threat.
And museums like yours are massively important, aren't they, for future education for everyone? Yes,
I think so. I think that it's important that, as well as celebrating those who undertook these actions today, we also remember what it was in aid of, the terrible fighting that occurred across the war, what it involved, but really also trying to think what it is that we are doing today, which it makes it so important to preserve peace, as well as why all of these individuals who went to war, what drove them, what motivated them, why they undertook these extraordinary efforts.
The RAF Museum in Hendon, well worth a visit. Thanks very much indeed for coming in.
We return now to the commemorations to mark the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings, the huge military operation in which Britain and its allies began the liberation of France from Nazi occupation. Well, events are taking place in Normandy, as we've seen in the programme, but also here in the UK, including a memorial service at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. It's hosted by the Royal British Legion. We can see live pictures from there now as preparations for that service take place. Now, of course, not every D-Day veteran wants to attend a formal memorial event. Alfred Booker was just 17 when he took part, and he says that he prefers to remember his fallen comrades without fanfare or ceremony. Navtej Johal went to meet him.
Alfred remembers. He can't help but remember. But he never celebrates. And he has no time for people who do.
If they saw what I saw, they wouldn't want to celebrate. They'd want to remember and then go and sit down somewhere quiet and forget about it.
This is it. They're on the beach, plunging waist deep into the sea and threading.
This is what he remembers. The 6th of June, 1944, D-Day. The moment Allied forces arrived in Normandy, Nazi-occupied France, and began the liberation of Western Europe. It was the largest sea and airborne invasion the world had ever seen, and one of the great turning points of 20th century history. Alfred was just 17 years old, an able seaman in the Royal Navy.
We didn't really know a great deal, because we wasn't told a lot. We was told you're going, you'll be in action tomorrow, and all that. The big guns will be going off, which they did.
His battleship, HMS Ramillies, arrived that morning at Sword Beach on the northwest coast of France.
Oh, what we saw was the main thing that I can't forget, was all them young lads running and climbing up the beach to get out of the way of the bloody German machine guns were firing everywhere, mowing them down. Terrible, terrible. It makes you wonder why I'm still alive and they've all been dead for years, years and years. And I mean, they would have grown up like I did and had a family and all that. And all that was all lost, wasn't it? With all them that were killed.
In total, more than 4,000 Allied troops were killed that day.
I'm nearly in tears thinking of those lads. Oh, what a way to go. Go out there, bang, dead.
You were there 80 years ago. What do you want people to know to be your message?
For God's sake, keep away from war.
Alfred is a father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. He's thankful for the life he's had after the war.
They're all to do with Normandy.
On the anniversary, the 97-year-old will be remembering those who didn't make it. You survived.
Yeah, lucky, wasn't I? Lucky old bugger. If you could survive that, you could survive anything.
Navtej Johal, BBC News.
Anna, thank you so much. Yes, royalty here, of course, and world leaders, but very much at the centre of all the events here, the D-Day veterans themselves. I want to introduce you now to Roy Harrison. He was just 18 when D-Day happened. He was on board HMS Diadem. That was one of the vessels that was protecting those who were going into shore. Roy took some time to meet with me. And here he is.
Oh,
hello, Roy. How are you doing?
I'm great.
What a pleasure to meet you.
Mate.
Slowly.
Slowly. Nice cushion.
So, Roy, here comes the tea.
Thank you, Phoebe.
Go, mate.
Cheers. I love you.
Immediately before D-Day, you were in Portsmouth, is that right? And
Yes.
what were you told? What were you told
Nothing.
just before?
Nothing. We weren't told where we were going. We knew something was happening because we came down off the convoy and we ended up in Portsmouth.
And your job was to clear a path for the troops that were landing.
Yes, that's what yes. That was clearing a path onwards for the troops. Yeah, going ashore.
And what was your job on the ship? What were
My
you
job
doing?
was what I called it, a nice name, an ADO, an Air Defence Officer. I was on the bridge and I was passing messages from gun positions and other positions on board the boat.
What could you see from that position? What do you remember of what you could see?
We could see everything. Too much to describe. Spitfires and Hurricanes chasing the Messerschmitts and seeing the men going ashore, wading through the water with their packs on their backs, some getting killed, and yeah, just floating there as well. So those poor men in the water. Please. I was up on the bridge and I could see it all, but I couldn't do anything. I just carried out my job, what I was doing, but I couldn't get in the water to help them or save them. They will always be my memory.
Everyone, Roy, watching this right now will know that you did everything that you could and you were asked to do.
Yes,
and I appreciate
yes.
it is upsetting for you, and I hope you understand that anyone listening to you tell your story, which is so important, will only make them understand more the significance of what you did in those days. Do you want a sip of your tea?
Be a good idea, perhaps.
I feel like it's getting cold.
Cheers, Phoebe.
I've got one. That's your granddaughter who's listening in over there. Let's have a sip of tea.
I still wake up sometimes, get what you call a flashback of different things, yes. We try to forget, but then people like Charlie Stake comes in and stirs it all up, and it's all right. Okay, Charlie.
Well, Roy, I hope you understand the reason.
Yes.
The reason
Yes.
that we ask these questions is precisely so people don't forget.
Yes.
And you are of a generation who can tell these stories because you know it, because you saw it with your own eyes.
I should have put my Union Jack ones on, shouldn't I?
They are,
Well, these
yes,
are,
they
but
are.
no.
You got better ones than those.
I got, yeah, brighter.
Okay. Roy, your family is all here while we're chatting.
Awesome.
And they tell me that you are 98, but you think you're 58. Would that be right?
Could be.
Is that about right?
I still act that way.
Roy was here today, and if I share with you this one thing, my last vision of Roy was in the tent over there. After the main event, royalty, King Charles and the Prime Minister were in the tent, and I could see Roy deep in conversation with King Charles and then the Prime Minister. A very, very special moment for him, and it has been for so many people here in Normandy. Anna, back to you.
Special day. Thank you for sharing it with us, Charlie.